Alright guys, today is April 13th. I should have the tags for this truck tomorrow or the next day. So my goal is to get it as close to being dialed in as possible so that as soon as I get those tags, I can hit the road and get some miles on it. So let me catch you up to speed. So what I'm working on right now is the temperature sending unit for the engine coolant. I'm running that line over here next to the mechanical oil pressure line, and then I'll run that up to the gauges. Now the reason I'm running that sensor on the side of the engine block instead of the factory location on the crossover tube for the manifolds is because I'm using that location for a switch to wire up a relay for the cooling fan. And I'll show you how I do that a little bit later, but I think it's pretty cool on these Crown Vics. There's a cooling fan module here, and unless you're going to be running more of the wiring harness, specifically the lighting control module, that's not going to work. Unless you're smarter than me, I've never been able to figure it out. So I'll show you how I wire that up later, because that's pretty cool. There's some people who dislike using the sending units on the side of the block because the cool water, or coolant rather, flows through the lower radiator hose and then it goes into the water pump. The water pump then pushes it into the motor where it ends up going through the lower portion first and then up into the upper portion. And the reason that most of the factory vehicles have the coolant sensor right before the thermostat is because that's the most uniform location to take the temperature. When you do it on the block like I do here, you're going to get some spikes. When you're really pushing it hard, it's going to peak up a little higher, and then when it cools down, it's going to show that it cools down faster. As long as you keep that in mind, you can use that as the location without any issues, but it's just something to think about. Another thing I want to point out while I'm down here, if you see there's this little tiny drip that's getting ready to drip from my power steering line. It's not enough to make a mess of the floor, but the reason for this is because when I cut that line, I didn't take into account how large my flaring tool was. So I couldn't fit the flaring tool on in order to do a double flare, so I just had to single flare it. So unfortunately, it's not making a super clean connection there, so it's not able to hold pressure as much as I would like. It's just a tiny little weep. There's just the smallest little traces of it here too, but that's just kind of the downside of doing the wrong flare. So I think I'll let that go for a while. If it gets worse, I may have to buy a new lower hose, cut a little bit farther, then do a proper flare on it, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. All right, I've got the oil line and the coolant sensor line ran through here. This is where the coolant sensor line goes. I went ahead and soldered this and heat shrunk it, and that goes into the gauge. And then I ran some more split loom up in here just in case that line vibrates at all. That way we don't spring a leak. The next thing I'm going to be working on here, on the power steering line, I kind of forgot that there was a cooler that went right here. Now that cooler, in the last episode, I said was the transmission cooler. This is not the transmission cooler. I had a couple keen-eyed viewers point that out to me. This is the power steering cooler. Now when I was trying to install this, I was mounting it this way, thinking that it was the transmission cooler, and that's where the transmission lines come from. And then I was having trouble, nothing was fitting, I couldn't figure out why. And then I was looking at this transmission cooler, and this one looked like it would cool better. So I went with this one, and I set this off to the side. And then after everyone pointed out it was the power steering cooler, I realized it actually goes this way. Now because I moved the radiator angle down, it's awfully tight in here to see if I can get those hoses around. So I'm either going to have to cut these short so I can get the flexible lines in, or I'm going to have to bend them out and around. Haven't quite figured out exactly how I'm going to do that yet, but I would like to get this power steering cooler back on it because with the 35s, it's going to have more of a need for that power steering cooler. All right, now this next part should be quite useful to those of you that are going to be doing the Crown Vic swap and you're not going to be keeping the entire wiring harness. Now this here plugs into the cooling fan module. The cooling fan module mounts right here on the radiator with one screw, and then on the other side of the module plugs in this line right here, which is direct to the cooling fan. This is the cooling fan module. I'll be selling this sucker on eBay because I'm not going to have a need for it. Now let me show you in the wiring manual here how that's hooked up. You've got a 50 amp fused line that runs into the module. You've got your grounding line here, and then you've got a red orange wire that comes from the powertrain control module into the cooling fan module. Now the cooling fan module then has just a positive and a negative that goes direct to the fan. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be removing that module and replacing it with this. This is an 80 amp relay. The wiring on it is pretty simple, so I kind of did my own little diagram just to show you guys here. This is exactly the same as this, just simplified for my brain. You've got your battery here, you've got positive and negative going straight into the module, one line from the module to the PCM. This is what controls that module and tells the fan when to turn on, when to turn off. This is how it's going to be wired up. You've got the battery lines that go in, and we're replacing the module with my relay, and then the relay ground is going to be cut and spliced from the line that was originally to the powertrain control module, and then we're going to put it to a temperature sensor switch. Let me show you what that switch looks like. Right here, this is that switch. It's pretty straightforward. It's just a grounded switch. It's going to be on off. This one turns on, I believe, at 185 degrees. So on this relay, you've got the two large gauge wires are obviously going to be the in and out. In this case, the yellow one is the in, and then the red one is the out. The yellow one here is going to be the positive for the relay, so I'm going to wire these two together to the positive line from the battery. That's going to be this right here that has the 50 amp fuse. Those will be wired in together, and then this will be wired up directly to the fan. And then that means that whenever this white switch is grounded, the relay will activate and the fan will turn on. That's how it's going to be wired up. So let me get this installed so I can show you how it looks. All right, guys, I got the relay all wired up. Now I'm following that line up here to the PCM, and it's going to be this connector right here. I'm going to have to pull this off, find the number 14 red and yellow, and then all I have to do is connect it directly to the switch right here, and then that fan will turn on anytime that's over 185 degrees. Now, one thing that I did not really think of, because it's been a while since I've wired one of these up, is that the positive power from that 50 amp fuse that goes to the radiator there, that has power all the time, and I stole power from that to power the positive side of the relay. Now, I think what I did last time was I gave an ignition on power to the relay. That way, when I turn the ignition off, the fan stops. So right now, the way this is hooked up, when I turn the key off, that fan switch is going to still be activated because it'll always have power. So it might take a little while for the fan to cool down. Now, the problem with that is that the temperature sensor is on the motor, not on the radiator. So if the sensor was in the radiator, which some guys do, then that would be fine because the fan would be on, and in a matter of 15, 20 seconds, the temperature would drop down enough and turn it off. In this case, the fan will stay on, the radiator will keep cooling itself down, but the motor itself is going to take a little bit longer to cool down for that switch to deactivate it. So I might have to go into that little yellow wire in there, and I might have to cut that and then splice it into an ignition on. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Let's get that unplugged and then get that wire spliced into the switch, and then we'll test it out. All right, guys, I accidentally corrupted the audio on the next few clips here because I had the microphone pulled out slightly from its little adapter. So what I'm doing here is I'm firing up the engine, and then I'm checking the coolant system for any air bubbles. I got all the air purged out of the system, put the radiator cap back on, and then I was testing out the coolant temperature sensors. So there's a built-in sensor that I can read with my OBD2, and I was comparing that with the sensor that I put in the side of the block. Those two were spot on. I was watching those readings, and as soon as it hit 185, the cooling fan turned on perfectly. Now, I then turned off the engine and waited for the fan to turn off to see if I was going to need to replace that yellow line that was the positive side of the relay, and it took forever. That fan was not going to turn off on its own for probably 10, 15 minutes. So I did end up clipping that wire, and then I hooked it up to a ignition on source so that now the cooling fan, every time the ignition is on, then it has the ability to have power so long as the switch is above 185 degrees. All right, guys, I found another issue. If you take a look at the side view mirrors here, check this out. They vibrate, and that is going to be annoying while I'm driving around. So I have an idea. What I'm thinking about doing is I'm thinking about doing a little bracket down here on the bottom, and let me make it up and I'll show you what I'm talking about. All right, guys, let's see how this works. So I'm thinking about screwing that on there and then just doing a couple of set screws. I think that'll give it enough strength. Let's find out. All right, well, it's all mounted up. There's still a little movement to it, but it is not nearly as bad as it was. That would have been annoying while driving. I guess I'll do the other side now. All right, I'm getting ready to make up the mount for my little engine cover here. And what I've devised is to take this, I think this is 16 gauge aluminum strap, and I'm gonna cut it right on these lines, and then I'm gonna bend it about 2/3 of the way down. I'll rivet a piece up here, have that bend come around the edge, and then I'll use this little latch here to latch it down. That way it's kind of holding it nice and tight. That's the plan. I'll put it together, see how it works. If it looks strong enough, I'll go with it. If not, I'll reevaluate. All right, guys, I finally got the engine cover all figured out. I've got one latch here. I couldn't really reach in there to get the other one, so I decided to put it up here. So I had to make a little bracket for it. So I just used the old bender over there to bend a little over 90 degrees, and then I put a screw in there, a couple of rivets here. So now I've got this top clip. And then, let me show you the other side. Real simple, just a couple of clips, but it seems to work pretty good. So I'll probably do some weather stripping on these 3 sides here, because the transmission cover here has those screws that go in, and you've got this little bit of a gap, and I don't love that edge. And it'd be nice to have something to seal it down here and then just kind of help hold it down. How easy is it to climb in and out of there?
Terrible.
Come on, it's not that bad.
I just felt like an old woman.
Yeah. All right, so here's the little cockpit for you. How is it feet-wise?
Oh, great.
Great legroom. Okay, I need you to look around at some of the more sharper areas and tell me if there's anything. That little corner there, I think I need to clean up.
Yeah.
That looks a little bit too sharp to me. Anything else?
No, it would be nice to have like a handle.
I agree.
In the back too, I think.
I think you're right.
But sharper areas?
Yeah.
No, I mean, can I touch this when
Yeah.
we're driving?
Yeah.
'Cause you got that heat shield.
Mm-hmm.
No, as long as you had like a little handle here, you could brace yourself better.
Yeah, so just a handle right there.
Easy. Yeah.
Some of the little buggies, they have like a little T that comes out of here with like
So you
hand
can hold
grips.
on like
Yeah,
this.
but that didn't seem to make a ton of sense to me for this.
No, I feel like I hit my
Well, we'll have 4-point seatbelts. All right, cool. So clean this up right here.
Yeah.
Make sure that this isn't sharp. This area should be all right. And then handlebar, just a hand hold right here to get in and out of.
I think so.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much. Let's see how easy it is to get out.
Much easier. Sure.
That's not bad.
That's not bad.
All right, thank you.
Did you record me going in?
No. All right, guys, it's Tuesday the 14th. I wish I had better news for you. I got a call from the title agency this morning. I was hoping that they were going to say that the tags were all ready to go. They filed all the paperwork with the state of Arizona, and they want more paperwork. And I've been trying to be nice while discussing my dealings with the government because I don't want them on my bad side. But there's no 2 ways around it. They're incompetent when it comes to custom vehicles. They just don't know what they're doing. The poor people who have the paperwork have no idea what cars are made out of, and they're just always so confused. So I filed all the paperwork. They wanted some receipts. I gave them the dismantle title for the Crown Vic, which is 95% of this vehicle, and then I gave them receipts for sheet metal, sheet steel, sheet aluminum, and some tubes. And they're wondering where all the other paperwork is. So I gave them every piece of paperwork that I have for every piece of steel that I've bought in the last 2 years, and I'm just going to keep flooding them with paperwork until they finally give up and give in and give me my stupid title. So I'm hoping that I can have the title by tomorrow, the 15th, Wednesday, and then I can still get this thing on the road and get some footage for you guys. If not, should be Thursday, hopefully. If it's Thursday, I can still get plenty of road time for you, but it's very frustrating. But only one way to go, and that's forward. We'll keep working on it. All right, guys. Well, I am looking around, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of things that still need to be handled. I would like to do the power steering cooler. I'd like to hook that up because I want to get it drained anyways to work on that little leak down there. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to solve that, but I think if I shave down a little bit of the fitting, I think I might be able to get a little bit more threading into the single flare, if you remember, that I did instead of that double flare, and I think I can make that work. Otherwise, I'd like to do a little cover right down here, just something, you know, a 90-degree bend up, because I don't want the poor little people in the back to drop a cell phone, have it fall there, and then slip down underneath there. That would be very frustrating. Speaking of that, On the driver's seat here, I still haven't done a little panel here, and I certainly don't want to drop anything down there. So I'd like to make a couple sheets there. That's no big deal, should be done pretty quick. One issue that I'm going to have is I need a mount somewhere in this general area for my phone. Let me hop in and show you. Now while I'm driving, I don't have a speedometer, of course. Speedometers are very expensive, and this is a $4,000 build, so I did not get one. I planned on using a speedometer on my phone, so I'm gonna need a phone mount. I bought one on Amazon, and I think it'll work. The problem is it's a bolt-on mount because I didn't want anything with suction cups or anything like that, and I don't know where exactly I'm gonna bolt it on, but I think that'll work. Another issue that it looks like I'm gonna have, if you see here the pedals, they're basically right next to each other. Obviously the fuel, the accelerator is supposed to be in farther, so you have to lift up and over to the brakes. It's not great to have them like this. I tried moving the brake pedal out a little bit, but I don't love that because then it's a little bit, you know, too much of knee movement to get it to work. I'd like to move the accelerator in farther because when it's down all the way, I still have a little bit of room behind it, but of course all the mounts are all welded up. So what I might end up doing on the brake pedal assembly, if you remember, I never loved the bracket that I made for the bell crank for the two rods, one for the pedal and then one for the power booster. So what I might do is I might make a new one of those to change the angle and then move the pedal out a little bit. I haven't decided there. Probably all the stuff I'm talking about now is going to be after the actual test drive, probably in the next video, but this is going to have a lot of little things to sort out over the coming months and years while I beat on it and start breaking things and seeing where the weak point is on the whole Crown Vic system. But just wanted to catch you up to speed. It's so close. I'm gonna start tackling the power steering now, seeing if I can get that knocked out, because I think with that power steering, I think I'm good to go. I think I can start beating on it. And I really want to get some miles on this thing so that I can finally pull those gears out of the rear end and put some proper gears in here. I did a little mini burnout last night. The kiddo really wanted to ride in it in the yard, and so I backed it up to the fence over here and gave it a little something. And it's so sad to have it be a little one-wheel wonder. It was just roasting a nice little path here with one tire through here, and I felt the other tire screaming, "Please give me some power too." And the last thing I need is to pull up next to some yahoo that wants to race and know that if I gun it, I'm just gonna be spinning one little tire like a sucker. So let's get this thing on the road and then we can get those gears in. All right guys, they pulled it off. They got me a title for it. I'm on my way to go pick it up now. Once I get the title back here, get some insurance on this sucker, and get it on the road. Alright guys, as is becoming par for the course on this build, I'm having some more issues with the titling. Got the title, got the tags, got the plate, everything's good, except for the fact that they valued this at $30,000. Why did they value it at $30,000? Well, they took the title for the Crown Vic that shows that in 2006 it was valued at $28,000. That was the new price of a Crown Vic. Then they added $2,000 in parts that I put onto it because that's what I had receipts for. The only thing I didn't have receipts for were the fiberglass and the coilovers because I bought those used. And I talked to them at the third-party agency. They said that they were unable to devalue the 2006 Crown Vic to what it should have been. So if I was to register the Crown Vic as a Crown Vic, it would have been $55, and that's with a $32 stupid fee that they're getting rid of next year. So $55 minus 32 is, 20 something bucks. That's what they should have been. It should have been about 80 bucks out the door. It was $550. So it was 5/6 of the cost of the entire car to register it for 1 year. So I have to go back to the MVD tomorrow. This is where it gets really cool. Today is Wednesday the 15th. On Friday at 4 p.m., the entire MVD is closing down, including all the inspection stations, because they're redoing all the software, and now that we're in the middle of a pandemic is the perfect time for them. So I have until Friday at 4 p.m. to go back, try and track down the original inspector and convince him to write an affidavit that says This vehicle that was used as a platform for this, the Crown Vic, is in fact a $635 vehicle, not a $28,000 vehicle. And according to the third-party DMV agency, he is the only person on planet Earth that is able to authorize that because all of the paperwork has already gone through. Now, if I do not accomplish this by Friday at 4 p.m., apparently they believe it will be locked into the system for good and will be unchangeable. So, fun stuff. But the point is, got a plate? Let's take it on the road. Let's go. All right, guys, I'm all ready to go. Let me show you how it's set up. I got a little GoPro right here for this shot. Then I got a little GoPro mount that I did on the hood, so I'll be able to get this shot. And then inside, I've got my cell phone hooked up to this super janky cell phone holder that I certainly hope will hold. I tied up a little wire here because if that falls, woo, it's gone forever. Now this, let's see if I got my phone on here. Oh, I gotta show you my secret password. Secret, nobody can see it. So this has my blue driver connected to the OBD2, so I'm gonna be able to read certain parameters like the fuel trim, the short-term fuel trim specifically, miles per hour. That'll be good because I don't have a speedometer. Coolant temperature sensor, RPM. It logs all this stuff for the whole drive so I can email it to myself and go back and virtually repeat the drive, and I can see if I've got any issues here. As far as gauges, oil pressure, coolant temperature, those are the ones that are working. Diff temperature will be set up when I put the new gears in. Transmission temperature will be set up later. I think I'm gonna run a connector on the hot line to the cooler so I can read the temperature at its hottest point. That was referred to me by one of the viewers. I think that's a good idea. Otherwise, I think I'm good to go. Let's get this set up. All right, guys, now as most of you know, the audio quality on the GoPros is pretty terrible, especially with wind, and I couldn't get my external microphone hooked up, so I decided I would just do a little voiceover here to let you know kind of what I was thinking during this initial test drive. My first impressions, I love this thing. It is so much cooler than I thought it was going to be, even without the gear ratios. Once I put the new gears in the locker in this, it's just going to rip. Now, according to the blue driver, my little code reader here, I only got up to about 70% throttle, and you can see from my facial expression, I was blown away at how fast this thing was. It sounds amazing. It's about 90 decibels, so it's really, really loud, but it is just beautiful sounding. And the J-mod to the transmission is fantastic. It shifts exactly when you want it to, right at the right RPM, shifts really solidly, really firm. It's awesome. Now this left turn that I'm about to make here, this is one of my favorite areas to test drive suspension on vehicles because it is rough. And it took this like a champ. You see from my face there, I am just blown away. This thing is going to be so much fun. Now after the stop sign here, I go straight ahead and there's a couple more little wash areas that are pretty rough. And it took everything I could throw at it, just soaked it up like a sponge. I'm doing about 30-ish here, and normally I have to slow down to about 5 or 10 to go over these bumps. They're so nasty, but it just whoop, soaked them right up. There's two more. These are the worst ones right here. Just whoop, soaked them right up like it's nothing. So could not be happier with it. There is a pretty pronounced rattling noise that you guys are hearing. That's the GoPro mount. That's not the vehicle. I didn't hear that when I was in it. All right, guys, I'm seeing some encouraging things from the data immediately. Just right off the top, you see the RPMs. I only took it up to 3,000 RPMs. The throttle position, I only took it up to 76% throttle. The temperature only got up to 201 degrees. Speed, 33 miles per hour. For the short-term fuel trim, both of them, they maxed out at 11%. So I'm definitely not getting as much fuel as it should. So it's going to take a little work to get it dialed in, but everything that I'm seeing, I'm loving. So I've already uploaded all this so I can take a look at it in a little bit better detail and see what's going on. But right now I'm just going to check for leaks, check for any issues, and then I can get back out on the road. Guys, everything underneath here is looking fan-frickin-tastic. Fluids look good, coolant fluid's good. The steering fluid's good, brake fluid's good. Still have just the teensiest, tiniest little leak here that's going to continue to drive me nuts. Back here, everything looks good. Everything. No leaks, no issues. Tail shaft good. The temperatures all seem good. I didn't use my non-contact thermometer to check it out right here, but I did feel it just with my hands right after I got back, and it wasn't even that warm. So Looks like all those people that were complaining about it are dummies. Unfortunately, the missus just told me that dinner is ready, so I need to stop this shenaniganery and then get some food in me, and then we'll get it back on the road. What I'd like to do is I would like to mount up the camera in some unique spots underneath the vehicle. I really love the shots where you can get the front suspension traveling, so I'd like to put the camera somewhere around here and just get this thing blah, 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 over those speed bumps. And then I would also like in the rear, I think it's kind of cool if you can get the drive shaft spinning, so I'll see if there's somewhere cool that I can mount it underneath there, get some more footage for you guys, well, and for myself, so I can get an idea of what's going on underneath there. But I will say, after first impressions, I don't think I'm gonna have any reason to not pull those gears out just as soon as possible, get the new gears in, and get them warmed up so that they'll be good to go, because I want to get this thing in the desert yesterday. All right, dinner time. All right, guys, this is how it sounds without the microphone. It's terrible, right? So this is the shot that we'll have. Once again, my apologies on the sound, but I think you guys just really want to see what's going on with this rear suspension anyways. All right, let's do it. Alright guys, I showed you that rear shot of the drive shaft. I was also able to install a GoPro on the front facing the driver's side suspension. Now, both of these shots ended up being super helpful to kind of see what's going on overall. In the rear facing one, I was able to see that there's a little bit more axle movement than I thought there would be. Now it's a 4-link rear, so there's no axle wrap from like leaf springs, and then it has the Watts linkage to help keep everything aligned. But the pinion angle still moved a little bit more when I was under heavy acceleration or heavy braking. I thought that was surprising. Probably nothing there, but I will take a look at those bushings to make sure. Now in the front, I love that front shot. You're able to see the tires turning, and you're able to see the sway bars in action, and you're able to see how close the bump stops are when it's going over some nice bumps there. I did notice that the front sway bar, the bushings are totally shot because that sway bar has way too much movement. So that was good to find out. So I'm either going to switch it out to a P71, a larger front sway bar, because I have one in the backyard that I don't need that from, or I'm going to just replace the bushings. Haven't decided what I'm going to do there yet. Give me your opinion if you have one. Also, there was this rattling noise in the front that was driving me nuts, and I kept thinking something was wrong. Turns out it was the clamp that was used to mount my little GoPro deal. The bottom of the clamp was just jiggling. So no problems there. Otherwise, nothing to really gain from those shots other than the cool factor. I thought they were pretty cool. So that's it for this episode. Next episode is going to be swapping out gears and putting in that locker, and then getting 500 miles on those gears so that they're well broken in, and that should be more than enough to get the suspension dialed in and make sure that all the bugs are worked out, and then I'll be able to hit the trails. So stay tuned. I don't know if that's going to be next week or if it's going to be the week after, because I do have another project that I'm starting that might be the video for next week. But either way, it is coming. I'm working hard getting these videos out, and I think this thing is going to be a lot of fun. So